Scott Weiland, one of rock's most distinctive voices, has died.
Shannon was found dead in the band's tour bus in New Orleans on Saturday afternoon.
Mark Lanegan has died at the age of 57.
Andrew Wood was pronounced dead from complications resulting from a drug overdose.
Layne Staley was found dead in his Seattle home on Friday.
Layne Rutherford Staley was born on August 22, 1967 in Bellevue, Washington, to parents Phil Staley and Nancy McCallum. Layne also has a younger sister, Liz. Layne's parents divorced in 1975, and Nancy remarried that same year to Layne's stepdad, Jim Elmer. Jim recalls, Layne was always a gentle kid, a kind kid, smart in his own way. Not school smart, but certainly incredibly intelligent, as we learned later in life. Tensions were high between Layne's sister and father, which led to Jim Elmer legally adopting Liz. Layne was not adopted, but used the Elmer last name throughout high school. When Layne was in 4th grade, he realized he wanted to make music for a living. Layne could play the trumpet, drums, and cornet. Eventually Layne took up drumming, but changed his mind, wanting to be a singer instead.
One of the funniest people you'll ever meet, maybe second only to my mother. Quiet, focused, many interests, like any normal kid, teased his little sister. Very close to my second child, who they're 3 years apart, but people thought they were twins, and they kind of went through life like that. They thought a lot alike and enjoyed doing things together. And in his Dr. Seuss book, it says all about me, and he said he wanted to be a singer. He was 9 when he filled that out. And I just assumed that he wanted to be a singer like some kids want to be a fireman or a policeman. So I didn't take it real seriously.
Regarding his grade school years, Layne said, "I hated school. I wasn't very popular and I wasn't big into sports. I liked woodworking and skateboarding." When Layne was in high school, he tried out and got the position as the lead singer for local band Sleze. The band performed a 45-minute set at the school's Student Activity Center in early 1985. The video is on YouTube and has been making the rounds for a few years now. After Layne turned 18, he legally changed his middle name from Rutherford, a name he hated, to Thomas.
Okay, the next song is by Armored Saint. It's called False Alarm.
I play for a rock band called Sleze, and I mean there's enough controversy on our name more or less than our songs. You know, we've just signed with a local record company. I don't feel there's anything objectionable about any of our songs, but I don't feel anyone else has the right to rate our songs. I mean, I'm the only one that has the right to rate, you know, my album. You don't have it.
On a rainy day in 1985, an 18-year-old Layne with long spiky hair, complete with pink jeans, walked into the music bank and asked if they were hiring. They were not. Layne continued, I was in here the other night, and I noticed you had this guy that was mopping the back hallway between rooms 36 and 42. Can you rent that? That's our fucking broom closet. I don't care, Layne responded. Can I set up a little drum set in there? Sleze started renting the broom closet for $150 a month, and Johnny Bacolas, a member of Sleze, recalled it was so cramped it could barely fit the 4 members of the band. Sleze was eventually upgraded to a proper room. Layne was also working at a factory with a friend, Nick Pollock, who will be brought up later in this video. In 1986, the young band finally gained a form of notoriety after being cast in the film Father Rock. The scenes featuring Layne and his bandmates were filmed at a local church, where Layne was pounding liquor in the bathroom. Sleze decided to change their name to Alice in Chains in 1986. Layne eventually got a job at the music bank, working the keys to the building. The job paid $4 an hour, which went towards room rent. Layne was also secretly living in the music bank, although he was not allowed to. The music bank was known for pranks as well as minor drug use. Marijuana, alcohol, and cocaine were fairly prevalent on the music bank during this time. Layne was using cocaine consistently, to the point where the band had a meeting about it. Layne started crying, and agreed he wouldn't do it anymore. Alice in Chains performed a 3-song setlist one night, where Layne met a guitarist by the name of Jerry Cantrell.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I heard him in, it's like the Tacoma Little Theater or something, playing with like Johnny and those guys, you know, and you know, those, you know, he was really young. We were really young. I think he was probably like 20, 21, or I was maybe about 20, 21. He was younger than me. Yeah, but I saw, the first time I heard that guy, and I was in a band in Tacoma, and you know, I'd already kind of played that city, I'd kind of played Tacoma out, and it was time to kind of bump up, and they were a Seattle band and came down and played, and the first time I heard that guy, I was in love with him. But it was one of those things that you know, that people hear, you know, you hear stories about bands. Like the first time I heard that guy, I'm like, that's the guy I've got to be in a band with, you know. He sang a way that I always wish I could sing, you know.
I met Jerry at a party, just out of the blue. I didn't think he was the coolest guy in the world or anything. He had no family in the area, so he's kind of struggling, didn't have any money or a place to stay or anything. And me being completely drunk, just offered this total stranger a place to stay and clothes and food and musical instruments, and the next, I think, 2 days later, he moved his stuff up into the rehearsal room that I was working to, and he got himself a little 4-track and kind of started out there writing and jamming with some people. He was playing with some guys that I thought just weren't up to par with the music he was writing, and I remember meeting Mike and Sean, prior to that. Mike Starr, by the way, was wearing a bathrobe, cowboy boots, and a cowboy hat on a Honda motorcycle. So I just, I don't know why, but those two guys popped into mind. It was about 2 years later when the whole thing with Jerry was happening. And, I remember that they were really cocky, and I said, why don't you give these guys a try, It clicked right away, and so we kind of did a trade-off thing. Jerry played guitar in my band and I sang for his band. And after a while that wasn't working. The guys wanted a commitment, so they auditioned singers, and that pissed me off. So I quit my band and joined this one.
The band dropped the Diamond Lime moniker and went by Alice in Chains, the proper spelling of Layne's original band. The Alice in Chains lineup everyone knows and loves played their first show on July 25th, 1988. Layne also met a girl named Demri that year, and the two began dating. In March of 1990, Mother Love Bone frontman Andrew Wood relapsed on heroin and overdosed. Andrew was placed in a coma with hopes he would recover. After being declared brain dead, Wood was removed from life support and died on March 19th, 1990. At the wake, Layne was very emotional, and this was recalled by his friends. Layne and Wood weren't best friends, but they had played together, and that mattered to Layne. Andrew Wood was the first of many to die prematurely. Alice in Chains was signed to Columbia Records and began working on a record at London Bridge Studios in Seattle. which would later go on to be the band's big break and one of their highest acclaimed albums, titled Facelift, with songs like Man in the Box, We Die Young, and Sea of Sorrow all being hits. The album was dedicated to Jerry Cantrell's mother, as well as Andrew Wood. Alice in Chains went from a local bar band to a Seattle grunge staple, seemingly overnight. The band began to travel around America to tour and do press interviews promoting Facelift. In December 1990, the band traveled to Los Angeles to shoot the video for Man in the Box, with a budget of fewer than $50,000. Alice in Chains was nominated for 9 Northwest Music Awards, but only won Best Rock Recording for their work on Facelift. The Seattle-based movie, Singles, originally was going to feature Mother Love Bone, but due to Wood's passing, that didn't come to be. Alice in Chains wrote a tribute song called Wood for the movie. On the night of April 17, 1991, Alice in Chains shot their scenes for Singles at a warehouse on a pier in downtown Seattle, which the film's art department had outfitted to look like the club. Dwayne Lance Bodenheimer, singer of the Derelicts, was present at the shoot, and Layne pulled him aside to talk. Bodenheimer had formed a close friendship with Demri, and the two seemed to bond over their usage of drugs. Bodenheimer recalls this by saying, "Demri and I started hanging out, and I knew who her boyfriend was. But it just happened one day. We had a relationship. We were together a lot." Bodenheimer says this was around 1990 to 1991, while Alice in Chains was on tour and Layne was gone. Layne confronted him about this, and Bodenheimer denied the relationship, because he was not proud of it. Bodenheimer kept seeing Demri, mostly while Layne was touring, but occasionally when Layne was in town. Layne called him again, telling him he knew what was going on, and that, in Bodenheimer's words, it was out there pretty much. Layne, presumably with long built-up jealousness and frustrations, finally reaching a breaking point, tore into him. "You're a piece of shit. It should have been you that died instead of Andy Wood. I fucking hate you." Alice in Chains blew up around this time, and they were being recognized at truck stops, swamped for autographs, and had become legitimate rock stars. One person who hated this newfound fame and attention, however, was Layne. Demri-Pro's mother, Kathleen Austin, recalled this by saying he couldn't go to a cash machine without it being written up. The Rocket would say, "Seen at ATM outside 7-Eleven on such and such at 3 a.m., Layne Staley." Layne and Demri had gone out to dinner with Austin at one of their favorite restaurants. They had just brought our food, the three of us, and we were involved in a family conversation. This guy comes up and just, "You're Layne Staley, my girlfriend's in the back of the bar, I need your autograph, I have to take it to my girlfriend." It just kinda hit me the wrong way, Austin recalled. I turned and I looked at this person and I said, "You know, we're trying to have a family dinner here. I'm sure that Layne would love to write his name on a napkin for you after we have our dinner." And of course he's backing up and backing off, and he apologized and he left. Layne had a great amount of respect for his fans, though he wasn't ungrateful, just overwhelmed. Layne and Demri got engaged that same year, and both Staley and Pro's families attended the dinner to celebrate the announcement. No date was chosen for the wedding, and it never took place. In early 1992, Layne and Mike Starr's use of heroin started to get around. Heroin wasn't a new thing, but around this time it was starting to get popular, in all the wrong ways. It was reportedly Demri who got Layne onto heroin, and then Layne got Mike onto heroin. In 1992, Alice in Chains only added to their fame when they released their most well-known and most successful album titled Dirt, which had Andrew Wood's tribute song Wood as its centerpiece.
MTV Buzz Clip. Watch the video and see what the buzz is about on MTV.
In the lyrics, we deal with a lot of painful issues without getting too specific, just kind of hitting more on feelings. And we found that a lot of people approached us and they experienced those same feelings, and they identify with it as almost to the point of where they, are certain that that song was written for them or about them. And sometimes, their situation is completely in another ballpark from, the situation that was in mine or Jerry's mind when we wrote, these lyrics. But that's kind of our idea, is keep them loose enough to allow others to apply it to their story, to their lives. We've taken some painful feelings and pulled them out of people and made it sound beautiful and make it easier for that person to deal with those memories or those feelings. What we wrote about on Dirt, or what I wrote about, if those were still significant issues in my life, today I might be writing that record all over again. But, you know, as with anyone's life, or you know, with time, you just move on to other things. And, you know, other things were going on during the writing of this record. And I think just the friction and the energy and the outside pecking at at us to get going and get moving on this record gave us the inspiration to kind of lash out and in a proper way. We kept this record really close to home, really close to the time and the experiences and what we were feeling. You know, we made the record in 4 months, and I think all those songs were just kind of a whirlwind of emotions that happened during the making of that record, you know.
By early 1993, Alice in Chains traveled to Europe to tour. Also on this tour was Grunge's golden child, Nirvana. Mike Starr was starting to act out on tour, adding random fans to the backstage guest list and other unfavorable antics. During a show, he had gone to Nirvana's room, where Mike, Kurt, and Courtney Love all shot up heroin together. Mike then went back to Layne's room, where they shot up, and Mike overdosed.
But he had saved my life in South America one time. We were touring with Nirvana and the Chili Peppers, and we were playing a big show, a big festival down in South America. And Kurt had taken me into the room, the bathroom, him and Courtney, and we shot up all night. And then Layne didn't know that. And I went to Layne's room, and we shot up, and I OD'd. And
oh, you shot up on top of what you had done with Courtney and
Kurt. Yeah, and so Layne didn't know that, and so I wake up and I'm all wet, and I'm laying over the toilet, and I'm in a different room, and I'm all wet, and he had added me in the shower and everything, and I didn't, I was obviously blacked out during that whole time.
Were you not breathing or something during that?
I was flatlined, and he said, and he's crying, punching me in the face, and I'm like, what's wrong? What did I do? He's like, you were dead for 11 minutes, Mike.
Like, what are the tech crews there like?
TV. That's right.
Univox. Does your tech crew, has it improved your sound? You think like in South America, were they freaking out? What was it like there?
I don't remember.
Because I once
shot coke with Alice in Chains all night. I don't remember.
The problem with heroin, does it automatically make you think about death because you're playing with your life a lot? Or?
Yeah, I suppose that comes with the territory. You're flirting with death, and that's probably what's most attractive about it at first, is the danger, you know. But I beat it. I beat death. I'm immortal.
Heroin? I don't know what all this fuss is about. I could handle it.
Everyone thinks they can control heroin until it starts to control them.
I could give up tomorrow. Couldn't I?
Back home, an intervention was staged for Demri, and Layne had flown back from Germany to Seattle to attend. When Demri awoke in the morning, her entire family, as well as Layne, was waiting for her. She casually responded to this by saying, "I'm not going to rehab," before walking back upstairs. Eventually, the group convinced Demri to go to rehab, and she decided to go. Demri checked herself out after being there for only a few hours. Back in Europe on tour, during a show in Sweden, a man in the crowd was seen hurting people in the mosh pit and throwing up hand gestures. Layne paused the show to invite the man on stage with him. As soon as the man got onto the stage, Layne smacked the taste out of his mouth before pushing him off the stage and back into the crowd. The crowd began to applaud Layne. After the show, the band retreated to their hotel, where in the morning, police were waiting to arrest Layne. Layne, however, was on a ferry, and once the police realized this, they stopped the boat and arrested him. After the cops heard the story, they actually congratulated Layne for it and released him, with the band escaping scot-free. In 1993, after his drug use spiraled and his behavior continued to get worse, Mike Starr was fired from Alice in Chains. he was replaced by Ozzy Osbourne's touring bassist, Mike Inez. If we're going to have to get another bass player, we're going to have to get a guy with the same name who smokes the same cigarettes, plays the same bass, and looks the same, Jerry Cantrell explained in an interview. According to Sean, no other bassists were called or auditioned. Layne was upset over the band's decision to let Mike go because the two were very close friends. It messed with Layne's head. Over the years, Mike Starr gave several excuses for why he was kicked out or left the band. Some accurate, others outright fiction. He told me that Jerry didn't like him, and that Jerry wanted him out of the band, and that he was blackmailed out of the band by Susan Silver, one of Mike's close friends said. In mid to late 1993, Layne had managed to get sober from heroin during another overseas tour. This was because heroin was extremely difficult to get where they were touring, leaving Layne no other choice. Layne looked significantly healthier and had put on weight. This was shown during an episode of the music show Rage, where Layne was guest programmer. He looked healthier than he had in a very long time.
From Alice in Chains, and you are watching Rage, aren't you? Yes, you are. It's probably the first band, the first new song that I've liked in about 2 years by any band. I haven't heard the rest of their stuff, but I love this song, Creep, by Radiohead.
Layne and Mark Lanegan were good friends, and also drug buddies. They would prowl the streets while on tour looking for heroin. One afternoon, Lanegan was sitting at home when Mark got buzzed from his front door. He opened it and saw to his shock, Layne. He looked extremely healthy. He had come straight from the airport, arriving back in Seattle from a rehab clinic, wanting to keep sober. The first thing Layne uttered was, "Hey bro, you got anything on you?" referring to drugs. Mark was taken aback by this. Layne followed up with, "All I thought about the whole time was getting out and getting high. I never wanted to quit. I only did it to make everyone happy and shut them up." Layne shot up in Mark's living room and stayed for hours. Mark made Layne promise not to tell anyone he was using at his house. So this is a cool one that I actually had to look pretty hard to find. This is Mark Lanegan's apartment building from Sing Backwards and Weep. I always wondered where his apartment was because he talked about this apartment so much in his book, and I was trying so hard to find it. And on Reddit, someone said they used to see Mark sitting on these stairs right here at 423 Terry. Nice set of stairs, a nice place. I'm actually gonna go around the side here. Yeah, a bunch of people came to visit Mark here at this apartment building. It's just a simple little brick building on this pretty nice and urban street here, but this building is definitely original, same building. But dogs barking at me, you know, all this. So it seems like all Mark's friends kind of converged here to ask him for drugs or whatever. If you read Sing Backwards and Weep, you'll know all about this building. Layne came here to visit Mark Lanegan, Mike Starr, Demri, they all came here to visit Mark. It actually took me a while to find this building. I was just curious on where Mark lived in Seattle. And this building definitely looks like something he'd live in. Just a nice, quiet little building surrounded by other huge skyscraper buildings. And the street looks like it's actually gone through some sort of renovation. It's really nice. But yeah, that's the building. They actually got trees growing on the building. Let me show you guys that. There's a tree growing up the side of this building. But yeah, it's a very nice apartment building. This relapse started the dark and outright tragic downfall. By early 1994, the change in Layne's appearance was shocking. He looked frail and had track marks on his hands with thick leather gloves. Layne's drug addiction had consumed him. Alice in Chains planned a summer tour with Metallica, which without a doubt would have been good for the band. The band also released another masterpiece in their EP titled Jar of Flies. In May of 1994, Layne appeared on stage with the band Tool to perform their song Opiate. Layne looked sickly during this performance and wore a wool ski mask to hide his face. During band practice for the Metallica tour, Layne showed up to practice high, where Sean Kinney and Jerry Cantrell vowed to never play with Layne ever again. Alice in Chains manager Susan Silver would release a statement saying the band was withdrawing from the Metallica tour and their Woodstock appearance due to ongoing health problems in the band. During the Metallica tour, James Hetfield, as well as Jason Newsted, would mock Layne for his addiction and for pulling out of the tour. They would do this numerous times during the tour, with it being captured on video and posted to YouTube years later.
Jason wrote that one. Fuck, he's cooler than we all thought, everyone. But this here is
While tens of thousands of fans were rocking out at Woodstock 94 in Saugerties, New York, a show Alice in Chains was supposed to perform, instead, Layne went on a camping trip near Winthrop, a small town in central Washington. His goal for the trip was to kick heroin. Also on the trip was Johnny Bacola's and two other friends, Alex Hart and Ian Dalrymper. He would try and detox on his own in the wilderness. He was using alcohol to help him with the withdrawal symptoms. During that trip, he was very depressed. I'm sure it had a lot to do with withdrawal, because he didn't bring any heroin with him. While sitting at the beach around 2 in the morning, Layne broke down in tears, crying on Bacola's shoulder. "I need help. Would you consider moving in with me and helping me with this? I don't trust anyone, and I can't do this on my own," Layne told Bacola's. Shortly after, Layne and Bacola's met up with Hart and Dalrymper and went on a late-night run to Safeway. "I remember some kid was giving Layne shit in the Safeways," Bacola's recalls, and Layne just off and clocks the guy. Layne's friends grabbed him and ran out of the store before anyone could call the police. They wound up driving into a parking lot packed with partying kids. With Layne riding shotgun, Bacola's parked the car next to a pickup truck that was blasting No Excuses. Bacola's doesn't know if this was coincidental or not. There may have been gossip that Layne was in the area. There were 3 or 4 kids in the pickup, and another dozen or so standing around nearby, gawking at the celebrity in their midst. They were cranking the song, and everyone's like, "No way, that's not Layne Staley." Layne couldn't resist. All of a sudden, Layne just starts belting out the chorus of No Excuses and nails it, Bacola said. Right when the chorus kicks in, he just belts it. One chorus, and that's it. It just shut everybody up. There was no question. That's him now. Layne was still struggling with sobriety, but Bacola took him up on his offer and moved in with Layne. Mike McCready of Pearl Jam started calling and asking to run songs by Layne. According to McCready, the band came together after we had jammed together 2 or 3 times and decided to do a gig. We did a show at the Crocodile Cafe, just making up shit as we went along. Mad Season played their first show at the Crocodile Cafe on October 12, 1994. For that performance, they used the name The Gacy Bunch, a reference to serial killer John Wayne Gacy and the TV show The Brady Bunch. According to a bootleg recording of the show, the set consisted of an early versions of songs that would appear on Above, in instrumental form or without fully developed lyrics, and an instrumental cover of Jimi Hendrix's Voodoo Child. Brett Ellison produced the Mad Season album, recalling the experience by saying, "I produced, recorded, and mixed the Mad Season album. Layne was not healthy, heavy drug use. Such a sweet guy and such an amazing talent. One of the best singers I've ever recorded. He could just stand out there and light it up. The problem was getting him there. We were in cahoots with his roommate, who'd help him get Layne off the couch and point him in our direction. Layne would show up, and he'd go back to the bathroom and be doing dope. Back there, and you'd wait for hours before he was ready to come back. He was pretty open about it. I asked him, why? Why are you doing this to yourself? He said, I'm either going to drink, or I'm going to do dope, and drinking is harder on me." Mad Season released their 1995 album, titled Above, to great acclaim. Songs like Wake Up and Long Gone Day featuring Mark Lanegan are hit songs even today. During this 1994-95 period, Layne would often join Second Coming on stage at local gigs to sing vocals on It's Coming After, with Bacola estimating the count of 15 to 20 shows. All this happened in the weeks and months after Alice in Chains pulled out of their tour commitments because of unidentified band members' health issues. The explanation given for the tour cancellation indicated that Layne was in deep water with his addiction, unhealthy and out of it.
That kind of experience was the most nerve-wracking, scariest experience in my life. We decided to do a show, Barrett and Mike and Baker and myself, and Mike came over to my house, and I was in bed, and he came in and woke me up and said, "You want to play a show in 3 days with these guys?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. When are we going to practice?" And he said, "Well, we'll practice the night before." So we went down and we came up with 2 or 3 songs, which the next day nobody remembered a riff or a lyric or anything. So what we did is we got on stage and they played music. They made up music and threw these riffs together, and they all stared at me and waited for something to come flying out of my mouth. And in front of all those people, it was, I wasn't sure if I was going to run as fast as I could off the stage and out the door, or if I was going to stand there and try and do it. And I stayed there and I spit something out that fit with the music and a record. I was more satisfied with the Mad Season record than any other recordings I'd done. I wasn't burned out on any of the songs, so that's the way we kind of chose to do the Alice record.
Alice in Chains regrouped in 1995, releasing their self-titled album. However, nobody seemed interested in the newest songs from the band. They were more interested in Layne's health and substance abuse issues, something that no doubt made Layne and the band uncomfortable.
Everyone I was getting interviewed by, and the other guys that were searching for a snazzy way to write an insult, and disguise it. And I was just tired of it. Nobody wanted to know about the music. They wanted to know, are you getting fucked up? Are you gay? Are you dying of AIDS? I'm usually the last to hear that I'm dying of AIDS or whatever it is. Yeah, I'm aware of it, and that kind of gave me an idea of how we were getting viewed, and that makes me want to come out and let people know that we're here, we're all right. The band was having troubles, and we kind of split apart for a while. I guess people the same people who put you on the pedestal are just dying to fucking tear you down and write about it first, And that wasn't happening with me, The guy who's supposed to fall down and be at death's bed and, I don't know, doing whatever people wanted to think I was doing, that guy was, making records and getting his artwork into gallery shows. I was doing what people didn't expect, I was working, and if people wanted interview me or talk to me, I want to tell them, that's what I'm doing.
Layne and Demri had officially broken up sometime between 1991 and 1994, but the two were still very close and very much together. Demri had reportedly instigated the breakup. In 1995, when Rolling Stone published a magazine with Layne on the front cover, titled The Needle and the Damage Done, Layne and Demri were out grocery shopping, and when Layne saw it on the rack, he nearly passed out. In early 1996, MTV contacted Alice in Chains, asking if they would be interested in performing on their MTV Unplugged show, a live acoustic show in front of a studio audience. The band accepted and began to practice for their first live show since January 1994. Layne, complete with a brown leather jacket, dyed pink hair, and leather fingerless gloves, walked into the Majestic Theater in Brooklyn, New York, ready to perform. When the show started, Metallica, sitting with their brand new short hair, was in the front row. This led to Mike Inez writing "Friends Don't Let Friends Get Friends Haircuts" on his bass. The sound of Nutshell played through the speakers, and Layne walked out to one of the loudest cheers heard in the building. The band played a seamlessly perfect show up until Sludge Factory, where Layne reportedly messed up the song numerous times. According to someone involved with the Howard Stern show, Layne was in horrible shape during the performance and was sliding off the stool he was sitting on. However, there's no proof this ever happened.
That's why I met.
Harry, can I tell you a story about when I saw them once?
Yeah.
I saw them at MTV when they were taping that Unplugged.
Yeah.
And I guess the singer was so screwed up that he was sliding off the stool that he was sitting on while he was performing. So a guy would have to come over and lift him up and re-prop him up on the chair.
Right.
Wow. And then he must have screwed up the same song about 50 times. They'd have to stop in the middle and they have to start over because they were taping the show.
Wow.
After their extremely successful Unplugged set, Layne and the rest of the band were invited to perform on a Saturday Night Special, making it their first TV gig in 3 years.
And afterwards, they led me to believe that we'd all become great friends. You know, we had a great time doing the video, and they said, yeah, we'll be great friends, we'll hang out. So I called them when I went to Seattle. I never heard back from them. I called them, never heard back from them. But I know tonight, after the show, that we're all going to be really great friends and hang out, right, guys?
We'll exchange numbers later if we.
But we get to hang out, though, right? No. Anyway, Alice in Chains.
Great job. Thank you very much. Welcome to the show. Thank you, sir. Pleasure to have you. Alice in Chains. Nice going. Thank you very much. We'll be right back, kids.
You're right. That and the Kiss shows, I think that was it. So for a period,
was there a sense of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for a period of time, and you know this, knowing that my band's probably f***ing over, and you know, knowing that one of my friends might be committed to going out that way, that's a tough thing to live with, and still try to keep that internal and support the group. And also, none of us really wanted to control one another. We just wanted to f***ing exist. And if that's where somebody's going to go, then that's what they're going to do. And we all went through that to some degree. And I don't think I was in great shape either. I think I was not feeling too hot either by my own hand for that f***ing gig. I think that's why all of that is in there, because all of that background that I just described, we were all living in that. We're coming to the end of it here. Unless something really drastically changes, we're coming to the end really quick. And I think part of that is in that performance.
In July of 1996, Alice in Chains was invited to open for Kiss, an honor the band didn't turn down. On July 3rd, 1996, in Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri, Alice in Chains would play their last ever live show. After a performance in which Layne looked dope sick throughout, Layne addressed the crowd. "We got one more for you. We've been out a week. You've definitely been the coolest crowd. I'm not just saying that. We've got to the mandatory crowd pleaser now," he said as the crowd began cheering and the band started Man in the Box. After the song, the four members locked hands and took a group bow. The bootleg video shows the band in good form on stage. What nobody in the audience knew at that time was they had just witnessed Layne's final public performance. After the show, Layne overdosed backstage. According to Susan Silver, they were unable to revive him, and he was rushed to a local hospital. Layne was released the next day, and he flew home to Seattle. During this mid-90s period, both Layne and Demri's inner circles blamed each other for the other's drug use. People close to them were trying to keep the ex-couple separated, hoping it would lead to at least one of them getting clean. Layne and Demri had gone to rehab as a couple in the past, checking themselves into the Exodus Recovery Center, the same place Kurt Cobain had vaulted a wall and escaped from in 1994. This didn't work, as the two checked themselves out. After pressure from both parties, Demri agreed to stop seeing Layne, fearing she was going to ruin his life. Demri's health was starting to fail at the young age of 25, and even got to the point that she was put on life support in 1994. Demri had surgeries on her lungs and twice on her heart. Demri was described as being extremely skinny and on death's door. When Kathleen Austin and Demri were driving one afternoon, another car cut off the two, with Demri exclaiming, "God, Mom, I hate you driving on this freeway every day. If anything were to happen to you, I don't know what I'd do." Demri said after the shock wore off, and then she said, "I don't know why I said that. I'm gonna die before you do." Austin turned to her and said, "Oh, okay, you love me so much, you're gonna have me bury you? Do you have any idea what that would do to me?" Layne would frequently come visit Demri during her many hospital visits, leaving before someone recognized him. Demri had formed a bit of a friendship with Screaming Trees frontman Mark Lanegan. She made advances on him in the past, which Mark shut down due to her ties to one of his closest friends. I covered in my Mark Lanegan doc when Demri came to Mark's door wheeling an IV stand to ask Mark for drugs. This seems to back up the claims of her deteriorating health. Demri started seeing a man in 1996, of which Layne did not approve. He left voicemails on the man's answering machine saying, "You're not a musician, you're a drug dealer." Demri had still kept some contact with Layne, visiting his house to clean it up every week. Layne had grown very paranoid about visitors and didn't let many people over. Demri was in the end stages of addiction at this point and had disappeared. When her boyfriend called her mother's house, Demri picked up the phone and told him not to call her mom's house before hanging up. Demri's boyfriend had left for rehab, gotten clean, and left her after this event. Demri was in such bad health, she moved to a nursing home, although she was only 27 years old. Demri stopped by her mom's apartment in October 1996, where she dropped off a card and left in short order. Demri had reportedly been reaching out to old friends and trying to rekindle fallen friendships. Demri had been staying with a much older man, who withdrew Demri from her family. On October 28, 1996, the older man drove Demri into Seattle so she could go to the grocery store. When the two arrived at the store, Demri was unconscious, and the man couldn't wake her. He then left the car and got his groceries before returning to the car. He then went to do his laundry before realizing that Demri, who still hadn't woken up, was in serious trouble. Demri was eventually rushed into the Evergreen Hospital in Kirkland, Washington at 7:30 p.m., 2 hours after falling unconscious. Kathleen, as well as her sister, arrived at the hospital. Kathleen asked if Demri could hear her, to which the doctor responded yes, and Kathleen told her daughter, "Dem, if you have a choice to stay or go, you don't have to stay for me anymore." The two left to get some sleep and returned the next morning. "Oh my god, she's gone," Demri's aunt said. Kathleen went over to Demri and touched her face, and saw that her chest was moving. I said, "Oh, her chest is moving." Then I said, No, that's the machine. She's gone." I don't know how to describe anything, that feeling of nothing. The night before, I felt her presence. Demri was still technically alive, being kept alive by the various machines she was hooked to, but she was gone. The life support was turned off, and Demri Perot died at the age of 27 on October 28, 1996. A devastated Layne was given the teddy bear Demri had in the hospital with her, and after losing his longtime girlfriend, he essentially gave up. In April of 1997, an entity known as the LaRusta Trust bought a 3-bedroom, 1,500 square foot, 5th-floor condominium at a building in Seattle's University District for $262,000. LaRusta was named for John LaRusta, Layne's alias. This condo would be Layne's home for the final 5 years of his life. At some point after Layne moved in, Toby Wright set up a home recording studio for him. Wright described it. "I think he had some digital audio tapes up there, a small console. I set up guitar paths, I set up a couple of vocal paths, and I think I had a keyboard path as well, and some multiple things where you could just go in, hit a button, and record. And the kind of thing he used to do demos." This is Layne Staley's apartment. He lived here from 1997 to 2002 when he passed away, and this is just a giant building. Now we're gonna walk around the corner here. I'm gonna show you guys Layne's unit, which is at the back. But first I want to show you when I get up here was this neighborhood is nice, but at the same time it's also just, for a celebrity of that magnitude, you could definitely just escape here. So this is the building guide. Layne Staley bought this in 1997. He moved here after his girlfriend passed away, and he essentially locked himself in this building, in this area, for the next 6 years of his life. The last 6 years of his life, he just wasted away in this apartment building. And I remember I came around the corner, guys, in the car. I came around the corner to go to this building, and this pit in my, oh my god, this just feeling in my stomach, like nerves. And I haven't had that at any of the other ones I've been to. So now that I look back on it, I don't think that one is Layne's unit. I think when I looked at pictures of Layne's apartment, I think this one with the big triangular balcony on the very top floor is Layne's. I don't know if there's a good place I can get a good angle of that. I'm gonna walk around here, but before I go, I just want to go show you guys one more frontal view of the building here. You guys probably recognize this from the news. Definitely sad. With Alice in Chains being unofficially retired, Layne would record guest vocals for his friend and second coming band member, Jesse Holt, better known as Maxie. The song Things You Do features Layne's vocal tracks, which were recorded in November 1997. It was also rumored that Layne was working on a solo project, similar to bandmate Jerry Cantrell, called Everyday. It is unknown if the solo EP exists or not. Susan Silver Management organized a Christmas party that year, held at a bar in the U District. Randy Biro went to the party, along with his former roommate, Kevin Schuss, who had worked with Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam over the years. "Hey, Layne wants to see you," Schuss told Biro at the party. "Great, where is he?" "He's right behind you." Biro turned around. "I'm looking past this skinny, fucked up looking guy, trying to see where Layne is." And it was Layne. I felt really awkward. He had a baseball cap on, he had glasses down the end of his nose, and not very many teeth. It shocked me at first. It looked like death. It was gross. Jim Elmer doesn't know exactly when Layne's tooth loss started, but thinks it was around 1995 or 1996, and said it was a gradual process. Layne invited Biro to check out his condo, which was around the corner from the bar. He described Layne as being very proud of his home. Layne had a massive rear projection TV, and all Layne did was sit there and get high and play video games all day. Biro, who was clean, asked, "Wow, have you got anything?" referring to drugs. "Yeah, but I'm not going to give it to you." "Why not?" "Because you're clean. I'm not going to be part of this. If you need to go do that, you do it somewhere else. I don't want you to end up like me again." This was the last time Biro saw Layne. In 1998, Alice in Chains reformed to record 2 brand new songs for their Music Bank box set. There was a sense of excitement before Layne arrived. Accounts vary as to the exact time he got there, but it was late, possibly as late as 3 a.m., according to Jordan. When he finally arrived, the change in his physical appearance was striking, even from his final live performances 2 years earlier, let alone from 1992. He had grown his hair down past his shoulders, in its natural brownish blonde color. He was wearing a white cap and eyeglasses. He had a dark gray shirt and a blue Dallas Cowboys jacket. He was wearing a necklace or chain that had what appeared to be a pipe hanging from the end. He was also carrying a black leather satchel. Layne showed up at the studio and I didn't recognize him. He looked like an 80-year-old man. He didn't have any teeth. I was shocked, to say the least. When Layne came in, we were all really shocked because Layne definitely didn't look like how he used to look. He had obviously been really affected by his substance abuse at that point because he had a trophy in his legs. He looked like an old man. They set Layne up in a control room so he could listen to the rough tracks and work on his lyrics. Shortly after, Layne went to the bathroom and stayed there for a long time. He eventually went back to the control room, where he found the mini fridge stocked with sodas. Layne took out a bottle of root beer. 2 guys saw him sitting on a couch in the control room, having nodded off, the root beer spilled on the floor. There are 2 pictures of Layne taken from this recording session, one of him playing with an electric drum kit, and the other of him blowing out the candles on a cake, celebrating his 31st birthday. Layne eventually told the band he had to fly home to Seattle to attend his sister's wedding. This wasn't true. Jerry blew up on Layne, yelling at him. The band eventually finished the recordings, and Get Born Again and Died were the last songs Alice in Chains ever recorded. In the late summer or early fall of 1998, songwriter and producer Matt Serlatek and Rage Against the Machine guitarist Tom Morello were putting together a supergroup called the Class of '99 to record a cover of Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall for director Robert Rodriguez's forthcoming sci-fi horror flick, The Faculty. The group still didn't have a singer, so they suggested Layne Staley. Sony Records got in touch with Layne, and Serlatek heard that Layne wanted to do the song. Layne was supposed to arrive at 9 p.m. to record vocals, but didn't arrive until 1 a.m., brought to the studio by Todd Schuss, an employee of the record company. Layne didn't look good during this time, according to Serlatek. He heads up to the lounge upstairs and has a bag of cheeseburgers from McDonald's. He's in the lounge, sitting in the corner, really timid. I say hello, he's chewing his cheeseburger. He doesn't really engage much, but basically he sits there for about 2 hours. So now it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that, when he finally comes out of his shell, after I talk to him for a few minutes. Layne didn't want anyone else around for the session. Complicating things from Layne's perspective, according to Serlatek, was that this was one of the first times he'd be working with people he hadn't worked with in the past. Serlatek and his team tried to make it as comfortable as possible for him, and he finally came down to sing at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Serlatek had his engineer hide under the console to work the preamp and microphone levels as he ran Pro Tools, to kind of make it more of a one-on-one direct experience, so he didn't feel like he was being watched and being judged. Serlatek said, "You can only know what you know about the voice you're so familiar with from the radio and albums." It was still there, but at first, especially, it was very papery, kind of a whisper, a ghost of himself. It got stronger as he got more comfortable with the track. Layne's lisp was apparent, so Surlatech had to redo some of the material where the letter S was especially pronounced. I think even on the final, we did some significant S removal and a couple of things to make it not jump out on the track. They finished at around 4:30 in the morning. He seemed fairly excited about it. He had settled into a little more of a comfort zone. For the music video, they dug up old footage of Layne due to his appearance. This was the last recording Layne ever did. In the late 1990s, Layne began to have an interest in Michelle Aaron Crane. The two exchanged numbers, and Michelle would come over and hang out at Layne's condo. The two would mostly watch movies together. There were visible signs of his drug problem at home. Although Layne never offered her any, in the middle of watching movies, Layne would excuse himself to go to the bathroom and stay in there. Eventually he'd come out, we'd hang out, talk, watch movies, and then go back in the bathroom again. Layne mentioned the subject of drugs to her twice. During one of the first times she came over, they were watching TV in his bedroom. Layne was sitting on the floor. Aaron Crane was on the bed. Layne looked up at her and said, "Hey, I want you to know I'm not going to be like this forever. I want a normal life, a good life. I want to get married, I want to have kids." The second time also happened at his apartment. He invited her into the bathroom, where his music equipment was set up. She walked in and saw Layne sitting on the windowsill. He didn't say anything, and the two started making small talk. She noticed several small plastic bags on a table. She didn't know what they were at the time, but years later, with the benefit of hindsight, she realized they were full of heroin. "I think he invited me back there to see if maybe I wanted to get loaded, but he didn't offer it," she recalled. "When he called me into that room and the drugs were in there, I almost felt like that was a test that I passed." The two were never officially dating, and they eventually stopped seeing each other. To the shock of everyone, on July 19th, 1999, Layne called into Rockline to discuss the upcoming Music Bank box set with the rest of Alice in Chains. This would be the last time the public ever heard from him.
Bob Coburn, an evening with Alice in Chains with Sean and Mike and Jerry, and I guess Layne Staley's about the only one we're missing here right now.
Put him on the phone.
Layne, are you on the phone?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, welcome to Rockline, man.
How you doing?
Dooley.
Blanche Dooley. Hey.
So, say hi to Sean. He's in Albany, New York.
Hey, what's up, Sean?
I'm in Albany, New York. He came over here with this.
When's the last time the four of you guys talked?
10 years ago.
Last time we were on Rockline.
10 years ago. Last time we were on Rockline. Okay, all right. Yeah. It's a public service for Alice in Chains kind of show is what it really is. Yeah. So, Layne, what's going on with you? How you doing up there? You in Seattle?
Yeah.
Yeah? Things going good?
Yeah, I'm holding the town together.
You're holding the town together. We just
that glue.
We just played "Get Born Again." Sound real good on that,
Spit
man.
that really holds it all together, you know.
Yeah, we just played it. Then you sound really great. Good, solid
right
vocal.
on. Play it again.
I think, Layne, you're probably hitting it on the head here. For New Year's Eve, you guys are going to be like the show tonight. You're going to spread out probably over about 4 continents, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. How many people are camped in your yard right now, Layne?
Oh, God, I don't even want to look out the window, for fear they might see me.
That's Layne Staley's house,
Makes
man.
you think you're
Pitch
like in
a tent,
Brazil
quick.
or something.
How many crazy chicks have their luggage stacked in front of my door right now? I don't know.
He has to beat him off with a stick.
Right.
He has to beat him off with a stick.
Remember that one that camped out in front of your...
Recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Another freak.
Yeah, actually, another good friend of mine turned freak.
That's the worst kind, man.
They all got to do it sooner or later.
Is this an ongoing story, Layne?
They are the worst kind. They have your real phone
Been
number.
going on since the early 60s,
Really?
Bob.
Since the early 60s.
In late 1999, John Frusciante of the Red Hot Chili Peppers and a former musician turned drug counselor, Bob Forrest, were called to Layne's condo by his mother to have an intervention. He was playing a video game the whole time they were talking. "Hey Layne, what's going on?" Forrest asked. "Nothing. I know why you're here," Layne said. "Your mom's worried, man. You don't look good." Of Layne's appearance, Forrest wrote in his memoir, his skin took on the look of bleached vellum. His weight dropped below 90 pounds. He had entered the end stage of the game. "I'm okay though, really," Layne insisted as he pretended to listen. The two of them eventually left. "I don't think he'll come out of this," Forrest told Frusciante. "It's his life, man," Frusciante replied. After the year 2000, sightings of Layne became extremely rare. For the very few people who saw him, they say that he weighed under 100 pounds, was missing nearly all of his teeth, and had abscesses covering his arms. In 2000, journalist Adriana Rubio traveled to Seattle to try and interview Layne. She instead was met with Layne's mother and sister. Rubio wanted to write a book about Layne, and he knew about this and disapproved of it. Layne said he wanted no part in it, and his family relayed that message. A former employee at a local Toys R Us shared years later that in 2001, Layne always got video games and loved shooting the shit as long as no one acknowledged who he was. She backed this claim up by providing a photo of Layne's signature on her seat, which she saved. It can be surmised that there are 4 things that formed his daily routine: his toys and video games, his cat Sadie, his art projects, and his drugs. Less than a 10-minute walk from Layne's apartment is a Petco and an art supplies store. Both businesses were open during the time Layne lived in the neighborhood, and it is possible he frequented these stores. In early 2001, Nick Pollock was buying groceries at a QFC supermarket in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood. He saw someone wearing what he described as a ridiculous costume, consisting of a funky hat, a fake wig, and a long coat, shuffling like an old man. It was Layne. Pollock approached him, not sure what to expect because on previous occasions, Layne had not recognized him. This time, Layne recognized him immediately. "Nick," he said, giving him a big hug. Pollock was alarmed. It was so disturbing to me that I had a hard time just putting sentences together. He looked like a dead man walking. He had no teeth that I could remember. His skin was gray. He looked like an 80-year-old man. He really looked like a skeleton with skin hanging off of it. If he weighed 100 pounds, I wouldn't have been surprised. The two spoke for about 10 minutes, Pollock said. Small talk that he tried to keep going. He didn't ask about Alice in Chains. I knew I wasn't going to ask him anything about girlfriends. Not at all. Not at all what he's been doing, where he's been. It wasn't the Layne I knew. I mean, really. It was like the ghost of him was in his body. Layne and Pollock made non-committal plans to get together. Pollock was so shaken, he almost walked out of the store with his cart without paying for his groceries. He went home and broke down in tears. Jeff Gilbert was walking down University Avenue, looking for a place to eat and shopping for records in late 2001 or early 2002. Layne recognized him on the street, approached him and said, "Hey Jeff, what's up, man?" Gilbert remembers it was cold, and Layne was wearing a long jacket, knit cap, scarf, and gloves. His pants were too big on him, Gilbert recalled. He looked like an 80-year-old version of himself, and it was frightening. They spoke for about 10 minutes, and he said Layne was lucid. He still managed to smile. Every so often you'd see that little glimmer. He seemed tired, very tired, like he had finished 2 40-hour work weeks with no days off kinda tired. He also remembered Layne smelled bad. Mike Korjanek, a waterproofing company employee, recalled seeing Layne twice at the Rainbow Tavern, a bar that was less than a 5-minute walk from Layne's building at the time. He would hang out and sit in the corner by himself in the late afternoon. He thinks this was in late 2001 or early 2002. Although Korjanek said other people spotted him at the bar during this period, calling him a regular would not be accurate. He looked ghostly. He looked very emaciated, Korjanek said. Guys, coming up right here, this building, cement truck right there. Coming up here on this building is a place where Layne was actually seen hanging out in his final years. He would sit in the booth of this place by himself and just sit there. And people knew it was Layne. People knew it was Layne, but they didn't say anything. But he sat in this restaurant right here, which is just across the street from his house. It's just across the street. And it's this right here. This used to be called the Rainbow Tavern. It is now called Lad and Lass Brewing. But this used to be called the Rainbow Tavern back when Layne lived here. Nothing really special about it. Layne used to hang out right in here. I don't think I can get close. It's obviously all been redone, but it used to be a little bar, and Layne used to hang out in there. And there's still some of these, like the Blue Moon, just right here. It's still a thing. This is Layne's neighborhood, guys. Like, this is where Layne hung out. He probably hung out in there too. That's still a bar right there. An employee at a local comic book store said Layne would come in the store semi-regularly between 2000 and 2002. The owner at the time told him, "That's Layne Staley. He'll spend a lot of money, so might as well stay open late for him." He'd kind of wander around, look at stuff, leave stuff all over the store, every now and then knock stuff over. No big deal, the employee said. He looked pretty high. He was always kinda out there, so I figured he was just wandering around and going, "Oh, let's look at this stuff." According to the employee, Layne would typically buy comic books and action figures, and paid with cash, but he could not recall what specifically Layne would buy, only that the selections were random. Whatever caught his eye, there was no normal pattern, he said. Layne had people with him when he came to the store. There were usually a couple people with him. They would kind of prop him up and help him with a lot. He did not know who they were. The last time he saw Layne was in February or March of 2002. A major family milestone happened in early 2002. Liz had given birth to her first child. Around Valentine's Day 2002, Layne went to Jim Elmer's home to meet his nephew Oscar. He brought a camcorder for the occasion. although Jim doesn't recall if he actually filmed anything that day. We hadn't seen Layne for a while, and he looked pretty good. He certainly was shy about his teeth issue, but he looked good, and you can tell that he had a little spark in his eyes when he saw Oscar, because he hadn't been through this before. So it was kind of like he knows what life is, and he knows what the next generation is, and he can be a part of it. It was a touching moment, and it didn't last very long, but it was very touching to see that next generation come up. A photograph was taken of Layne holding Oscar. This is the last picture the family has of him, and is the only image that is known to exist of him from the final months of his life. It is likely this was the last photograph of him ever taken. Jamie Elmer, who was not there but has seen the photograph, said of Layne's appearance, "He looked like I remember him looking when I had seen him last. He was smiling and looked like Layne, but he looked older than he really was, and he looked like he was sick. He did not look well. He looked sweet, and he looked happy." Layne's mother told Greg Prado, "I think Layne knew he was dying, but he didn't plan on it. He had just gotten his driver's license renewed, and he was in the middle of art projects. I really expected that Layne would survive this ordeal." In early 2002, Layne was contacted to sing on the band Taproot's new album. The band sent Layne a demo for the song called Spacey, and Layne agreed to sing on it. Layne requested Toby Wright come alone because he wasn't looking or feeling great and didn't want to be seen. The plan was for Layne to do his thing and write his own lyrics, and then have Taproot singer Stephen Richards work off whatever Layne did. The recording was booked for mid-April 2002. Based on the available evidence, the last person to see Layne alive was Mike Starr. On April 4th, 2002, Mike's 37th birthday, they met at Layne's apartment. "I'm sick," Layne told his friend. In addition to the toll years of addiction had taken on his body, Layne also had hepatitis C, presumably the result of intravenous drug use. Layne was channel surfing and stumbled upon the John Edward program, Crossing Over, in which a psychic medium did readings for audience members. He turned to Mike and said, "Demri was here last night. I don't give a fuck if you believe me or not, dude. I'm telling you, Demri was here last night." Demri's mother, Kathleen Austin, heard the story from Mike Starr after Layne's death and relayed the story. She said she believes her daughter was there that night to be there with Layne as he was doing his transition. Jason Bettino, who also heard the story from Mike, corroborated Austin's account of Mike and Layne's conversation. Mike, who was high on benzodiazepine, later said he was with Layne that day, trying to keep him alive, and offered to call 911. Layne refused and threatened to never speak to him again if he did. Layne got agitated, telling Mike he was too high. Layne would get upset with him when Mike was on benzodiazepines. "You're an idiot on these pills," Layne told Mike. Mike had enough. "Fine, I'll just leave," he told Layne. Layne, perhaps thinking he had made a mistake, said, "Not like this, don't leave like this," or "Not like this, I can't believe that." These would be his final words to his friend he had known for nearly 15 years. Mike went to his mother's house and blacked out in the basement. This final encounter would haunt him for years. At some point on April 5th, 2002, Layne used heroin and cocaine, known as a speedball. This combination has killed other high-profile drug users, including actors John Belushi and River Phoenix. Nobody will ever know precisely what Layne did on the final day of his life, or his state of mind at the time. On April 5th, 2002, Layne Staley died at the age of 34.
I was with Layne the day, it was my birthday, he died the day after my birthday. And I was with him all that day on my birthday, trying to keep him alive. And I even asked him if I could call 911, and he said if I did, he would never talk to me again. And of course, I didn't know he was going to die, or I would have called 911 anyways. Of course, I would much rather have had him alive and him not talking to me than to have lost such a great human being. So, dear friend, just a great person. What a great person he was.
According to Susan Silver, no one had heard from him, and the people that we were in touch with to let us know that he was still okay hadn't heard from him. His little odd weekly habits had stopped. Sean got a call from one of those people and said, "I'm going over there, and I'm going to kick the door down. I have this sick feeling in my gut." She told him they needed to get Layne's family involved. I got a call from Susan that morning, and that's when I called Nancy and explained the situation, that this is not a band issue, it's a family issue, and they can't raise him and so forth. Jim Elmer recalled at 5:41 p.m. on Friday, April 19th, 2002, Nancy Layne McCallum dialed 911 from her cell phone while standing outside Layne's building. She told the dispatcher she had not heard from her son in 2 weeks and that he was a heroin addict, and she requested officers to stand by while she checked on his welfare. Officers Kevin Grossman and Joseph P. Mahar of the Seattle Police Department arrived at the building at 5:50 p.m. Officer Brett J. Rogers authorized a forced entry into Layne's 5th floor apartment. Mahar kicked the front door in, causing approximately $200 worth of damage to the door frame. According to a police report obtained by the Smoking Gun, upon entering, McCallum and Elmer's worst fears were confirmed. "I think we knew. I knew this was not going to be a pretty scene, because the door was bolted from the inside, and nobody had heard from him for a week. There was no activity on the card, and that does not bode well for what you're going to find. So once the officers had gotten inside and took a quick peek, they said, "You don't want to see this," and so Nancy knew immediately. I said to the officers, "You cannot take a mother away from her child, so you let her go in there and see what's going on." Layne was on the sofa, holding what appeared to be a loaded syringe in his right hand, lit by a flickering TV screen, and surrounded by several cans of spray paint on the floor, and a small stash of cocaine and 2 crack pipes on the coffee table. When the body was moved, it was discovered he had been sitting on numerous other syringes as well. The body was described as being in an advanced state of decomposition, and the skin had a darkened, leathery appearance. According to documents obtained by Seattle Weekly, Layne had morphine, codeine, and cocaine in his system, and his body weighed 86 pounds. The medical examiner would later conclude that acute intoxication, combined effects of opiate and cocaine, was the cause of death. When police checked his answering machine, it had 2 weeks' worth of calls from people who were trying to check on him. Despite the horrific state of the body, Elmer said he could still recognize Layne. Drug paraphernalia was found throughout the apartment. Brown stains of heroin led from the bathroom floor, where $501 in cash was found next to the toilet, to the living room. Layne's cat Sadie was somehow still alive, and was later adopted by Jerry Cantrell. When we found him, I walked into the dining area of his home. I walked over and I asked the police if I could move things off the couch, and they said yes I could. And I sat down with Layne, and I talked with him, and I told him I'm sorry it turned out like this. According to Elmer, we saw Layne on the couch, and the needle in his leg, and he certainly deteriorated in color. And Nancy went outside and just caved into the corner of the room, and she was just devastated, as you can expect. I said my last goodbyes to Layne, told him that Demri was waiting for him, and that was that. Later that night, news of Layne's death broke, and fans as well as the media were paying tribute to the fallen musician.
Hi, welcome to CNN Headline News. I'm Anna Hovind. The lead singer of the rock band Alice in Chains has been found dead in his Seattle home.
Seattle police say they responded to a call from one of Staley's relatives asking them to check on his well-being since he hadn't been seen in 2 weeks. Police then discovered a body, later identified as Staley, that had been deceased for at least a few days, surrounded by intravenous drug paraphernalia.
All right, welcome to a special edition of Loud. This is actually not special at all, nor is it fun. We're going to take the next hour on this program and remember the life and the music of Layne Staley.
Layne's storage units and 2000 Pontiac Firebird were broken into by drug users who were friends of Layne's. They stole Layne's artwork, which was recovered by his estate, and his Harley-Davidson motorcycle, which was driven for 50 miles on 2 flat tires before being found in someone's living room. The Linwood police contacted the Seattle police to inform them that they had Layne's MTV Video Music Award in their evidence room. One thing that was never recovered was Layne's journals. Less than a year after his death, Adriana Rubio released her book titled Angry Chair. The book was poorly written, and its news value was a series of quotes attributed to Layne that Rubio claimed was from an interview he gave during a 3 a.m. phone call on February 3rd, 2002. Because the book was published after his death, Layne was never able to comment on the quotes attributed to him. Evidence suggests this conversation never happened. The process of going through Layne's apartment and taking inventory of his personal effects was not easy. Because of health concerns surrounding the drug paraphernalia found in the apartment and Layne's hepatitis C diagnosis, a special cleaning crew was hired to sanitize the entire apartment so they could start packing up Layne's things. Mike Korjanek, an employee at a waterproofing company that had previously done work in Layne's building, was hired to do some work in Layne's apartment less than a week after his death.